Now that our vertical form is leather hard, it's ready for us to start the cleanup process. The first thing we need to do is with our scraper or the Sureform tool if you prefer. I prefer the bigger scraper to the smaller one simply because I have more area in contact with the clay. Be careful that you don't press so hard that you deform it also helps to have all your tools handy. Be careful not to press so hard that you deform the inside of your piece. If you do, you can work from the inside to gently bring that back out again. I'm just very carefully and methodically going to work my way around the piece, clean up this bottom where that edge added a little extra thickness. Clean up any finger or tool marks that we have outstanding. Go over this seam, get rid of the evidence that we have altered the form there. Cleaning up your mess as you go is also helpful. That way you're not working in the shavings from what you just did a minute ago. Just very carefully work at getting your piece nice and smooth, burnishing down all the cracks and clay texture that was left behind from the forming process. I'm not going to refine my top edge just yet because I'm actually going to alter the shape of the top of this form with one of our finishing techniques. And once you have your form refined to the degree that you would like, and you've gotten rid of all this extra tool texture down around the bottom, we can move on to the next step of this form. You'll notice that by scraping down around this bottom edge, I've lifted up that bottom a little bit. And very carefully just bring your scraper around, take all that off, run your thumb around the bottom. And this will clean up more when we go to do the final refining with our sanding screen as well. Now with this form, I'm going to show you 6 possible ways that you can decorate or alter your leather hard form to impart design ideas without texturing it beforehand. Okay. The first one I'm going to show you how to do is how to create an incised line. Now, an incised line is very simply a line drawn in the surface of the clay. And at the leather hard state, this is very easy to do. We can gently rest our leather hard form on the table, and with a dull pencil works better than a sharp one because you have less of a tendency to tear the clay. We're just going to draw the pencil through the clay. Now what we want to make is a nice sharp line, but what we don't want to do is we don't want to drag it through the clay because that'll actually curl the clay up around the edges. You just want to very gently draw it down, and you can draw whatever designs you would like, however they appeal to you. And you will see that there is a little bit of clay that forms up around these edges, And that's okay because when we go to do the final refining, we can work that out of the form. Remember, don't push so hard that number one, you draw through the form, and number two, you don't want to deform the form. Our piece is leather hard, it's fairly stiff, but it's not so stiff that if we draw too hard, we're not going to go through it or possibly break it. So that's your first technique. That's the incised line. Our second technique is carved relief. Now, when we carve into the side of the clay, and actually, I'm going to use this incised line here as my edge to do it. And we're basically beveling the edge of this line very gently with our loop tool. And what this does is it gives us the illusion that we have more material raised up here than it looks like we did. And we have to be very careful that you don't carve so deep that you carve through the piece. You want to be careful of that. And just slowly bevel this whatever edge it is you choose to do. Or if you're beveling around a design to make it look like it's raised, that's another option. Once you've carved out what you want to, you're going to want to come back with your metal scraper and gently work it into that line, just to ease out all these little tool marks that you created with your loop tool. And be careful that when you do it, that your scraper doesn't jump up into the rest of your form. And you can see how that's created a very subtle shadow along this line that gives this a raised feeling on this side. So that's something you can use to your advantage as well in your designs. Clean up my mess again. The third thing we can do is add texture. Now, when I say texture, I don't mean texture as in we're pressing things into the clay, although we're doing that. I'm talking more in terms of visual texture and adding perspective. One way of adding visual texture to a piece is to create a sense of perspective or movement. And the easiest way to do that is to start with a very tight cluster of impressions, and as it moves outward becomes a much looser set of impressions. I'm just using the end of my pencil here. And this can give us a sense of visual texture.